Hello. How's everybody doing? Good? Has all your coffee worn off?
Yes.
Mine too. I think the mistake was having wine at lunch. Cool. Cool, so my name's Sally. I'm here to talk about embracing the Internet of Things for cats. And before I get started, originally I was actually supposed to talk about making the inclusive toolkit, but the talk wasn't quite ready. So I've switched to a not very related topic. But I really want to thank the organizers of Pragma conference they kindly donated some tickets to my Kickstarter to fund the inclusive toolkit. So I'm super appreciative of that. So on to the real thing, embracing the Internet of Things for cats. For cats. Cats are very sophisticated creatures. They have very active lives. So, some of them are astronauts or queens. So what could wearables for cats actually be? And, would they use them? That would be good. Sadly, that doesn't exist. So a bit of background on me. I've been an iOS developer pretty much since the first SDK, and I've worked on lots of different apps. I've worked in agencies, I've worked in internal teams, I've run mobile teams, I've done contracting and consulting. But in December last year, the company that I was working at, where I was running a team, basically decided to downsize the iOS, Android, and Windows team down to just iOS. So my team of 12 people was being shrunk down to 5. Ouch. I had a choice to stay in a role where I wouldn't really be doing much, or I could leave and do something new. But there wasn't really much of me that wanted to stick around because I'd spent all this time building this team, and it was being taken apart. So I decided that probably wasn't a good future. So I ended up taking voluntary redundancy. I'm originally from America. The concept of redundancy is amazing. They actually give you money to go away and do something else. So that's what I did. And I left at the end of January with no idea what I was really going to do. And a few weeks later, I was at an event in London called the Mobile Forum, which is hosted by Facebook. And there was a talk about wearables. And of course, what about wearables for cats? Because, that's the natural progression of things for me, at least. And there was wine involved, too, probably. And the more that we kind of joked about it, the more it was like, well, this actually seems like a really good idea. And there was a few more glasses of wine, and within 15 minutes, we'd pretty much formed a company. But when I caught up with everybody a few days later, there was this general resounding, "Oh, you're serious?" Yes. Yes, I am. So I decided personally that this was something that was really intriguing, and I wasn't tied down to any job or anything. So I thought I'm gonna pursue this for a bit at least. And I've always been really interested in hardware. But because my background's in software, it's never something where I felt like I could get a job involving hardware because other people are far more qualified, probably. So I ended up basically employing myself. And I'd done quite a few projects over weekends and stuff in the past, usually Arduino-based. And one of them even featured cats. So we took an old iMac apart, took the screen out, and put a pressure switch in the bottom so that when the cat gets in, it tweets to say that he's taking a nap. Obviously super usable, but within about a week or so, the cat decided he didn't even want to use it as a bed anymore. So the whole project kind of got discarded. But with cat wearables, I wanted to make something that would be more lasting and something that has an impact. But to make an impact, you first need to solve a problem. And to solve a problem, you need to actually figure out what the problem is. So what kind of problems do cats have? This is Pavlo. He is my big, fluffy Siberian forest cat. Siberian forest cats are known for being naturally hypoallergenic. So if you're allergic to cats, this is the breed for you. He's an indoor cat only, and he has a food allergy, so he eats a very specific diet. He spends a lot of time sitting on the couch, like this, watching TV. And as an indoor-only cat, he doesn't get much exercise. But he is incredibly smart. He's figured out how to open doors. If you wait for it. Hey. So this is quite problematic. We actually have to put door stops under the doors so that he doesn't get in at night. But yeah, it's very cool. And he's a lot of cat. There's a lot of fur there, but he's also quite a large cat. He's about 7.5 kilos. And whenever we take him to the vet, they generally say, yeah, he should probably lose a bit of weight. And I don't want him to be this unhappy fat cat that just keeps getting fatter as he gets older. I want him to be super cat, which I think he sometimes thinks he is, as he tries to like save us from moths and flies and bits of plastic. So weight's definitely a problem for my cat, but is it a problem for lots of other cats? Well, there's over 55% of cats that are overweight or obese in the world. This adds lots of stresses upon their bodies. It increases their risk of diabetes, liver problems, and joint pain. And there's about between 200 to 300 million cats worldwide that are kept as pets. So that gives me potentially, even if it's just overweight cats that use this, that's 110 to 165 million potential users. So yeah, this is definitely a problem for lots of other cats. And this year, global pet spending will actually surpass $100 billion US. So this is across all pets, not just cats, but that's still a lot of money. And although I've had cats for pretty much my entire life, and I know lots about their slightly strange behaviors and weird things that they do, I also spent time reading up on cat behavior to try to find ways that I could leverage their existing behaviors. So I've confirmed that this is a problem. Now I just need to solve it. So getting to the root of the problem, what is it that causes obesity in cats? If you remove factors like thyroid problems and other medical conditions, just like humans, it comes down to two main factors: diet and exercise. So diet is a major part of why so many cats are obese. Cats are overfed, and they're given food that doesn't really meet their dietary requirements. What's worse is when they get bored, they just tend to overeat. And although this is a significant cause for obesity in cats, I didn't really want to work on inventing a new type of cat food. It's not as fun. But the other part is exercise. Simply put, the amount of calories burned needs to be greater than the amount of calories consumed. So if you consume more calories than you burn, you gain weight. But this seemed more like something that I could work on. So I just need to make the cat do some exercise, right? Let's give it a treadmill. How hard can that be? So I had this idea in my head about what the wearables should be. But after doing the research, I wanted to make sure that my idea still fit in with what actually needed to be solved. So before I could build a prototype, I needed to list out the requirements of the system. So obviously we need to actually track the cat's activity, otherwise we don't know how active the cat's been. So we need something that the cat can wear, most likely a collar since they're already used to wearing one. And then we also need a way to engage the cat so that it's more active, so that we can make sure it's burning calories. So probably some sort of toy, since again, they're already used to that. And then the data from the collar and toys needs to be collected and sent to the cloud, probably someplace, and quantified a bit so that the owners can view the results. And of course, there needs to be an app, because there's an app for everything. And this is really something that the owners can use to view all the stats about their cat. So we end up with a system like this, where we've got a collar on the cat, and a toy, and they can talk to each other, and they can also get information and send information to like a brain, and then the brain sends stuff up to the cloud, and the app gets stuff from the cloud. And the collar will track the activity of the cat. When the cat has been inactive for too long, a toy turns on, starts moving around and making noises, and as the cat plays with the toy will change its behavior to keep the cat engaged. So obviously it's important to see what other people are doing. People spend a lot of money on their pets, and I had to search around the internet to try to find anything kind of vaguely similar. And there's lots of things in the wearables for dogs market, mostly around trackers and GPS logators. There wasn't really much for cats. And then I found this, which is a wearable Instagramming camera for cats. The cat looks so enthusiastic about it as well. Sadly, it's not a real product. It was a promo campaign made by Whiskas in Australia. Thankfully. Please don't go and make one of these. So I couldn't, after all this research, I couldn't find anything that did the thing that I wanted to do. But you know, ultimately, that kind of research is hard. There's always stuff that exists that you can't just find through Googling. And I was starting to tell people in the iOS community that I was working on cat wearables. Everybody thought I was crazy. And one thing that was frustrating at the beginning was I would tell people and they would say something like, oh yeah, I've seen something like that before, you know, that's already been done. And at the beginning I found that quite demotivating. But I've since learned to ignore that because ultimately first to market means very little and competition is a good thing. So even if somebody is doing this, I'm doing it too. But what's important to me is to make something that cats will engage with and actually love. So that's what I've been focusing on creating. Prototyping. It's the best word ever. I need to verify my ideas, and this is the point in app development where I'd start prototyping. So that's what I started working on next. And I really wanted to focus on making lean, very specific prototypes. I had a big picture idea of what I wanted to do, and working on my own, it's very easy to get bogged down with, I've got to make a collar and the toys and the brain and the app and the cloud, and oh my gosh, it's so much stuff. So I wanted to stay motivated, so I was focusing on very fast prototyping, very cheap prototyping as well, because I didn't want to spend much money. So I first looked at my scary diagram and went, wow, that's 3 separate pieces of hardware and an app and the cloud. What can I eliminate and just focus on first? Well, I can definitely take out the cloud bit and the app because those are really more an incentive for the owners than to actually verify whether or not the cat likes this. So let's take those things out. And then ultimately, we can probably leave the brain out for a while since it just exists as a way of the cat's data to be uploaded and passed on to the owner. So that's a non-essential part of verifying. And really, to start, I could just make a collar or make a toy because both of those are working, and then I can actually focus on making them work together. So the collar. I wanted to make something as simple as possible to prototype the collar with. What's the absolute minimum I can do to make a prototype collar? So I thought about putting a Fitbit on my cat, but that would only give me human steps, which are a bit different from cat steps. And cats do lots of things other than just walk. And I did put the Apple Watch on him. The green band looked really rockin', but he didn't really like it much. So I figured, well, the 2 things that I really need to do is to be able to track the movement and have that data communicated back. So that means I need something where I can access raw accelerometer data and probably something that has Bluetooth. So I searched around. I didn't really want to go the route of Arduino, and because some of them are quite big and you can't really strap like a massive board onto your cat. You can't really plug them into a wall either. It doesn't work well. So I found this, which is a MetaWare board. It was pretty cheap. You can get 2 of them for about $80 US. It has an iOS SDK, woo, in Objective-C though, with a fully functioning sample app that works with all the different, you get access to all the sensor data, you can expand it and get more stuff. It's really, really awesome. And I figured if the cat wearables thing doesn't pan out, I could probably use it for another project. So size-wise, in context, that's next to a 2p coin. And I've localized it next to a euro coin. So it's very little. And the bit underneath, kind of in the silver packaging, is the battery. And the thing that comes out of the top is a little coin motor. So at this point, I realized I did actually need some sort of brain, but not really a final one, just kind of a temporary one, so that I can at least get some data from the collar without having to plug it into my computer. So for this, actually, I ended up just using an iPhone and running the MetaWare app on the phone so that I could just get data from the board. Before that, I could actually start putting the prototype collar in the cat. I needed to get him used to wearing a collar because he had never worn a collar before. And this is what happened the first time I actually put the collar on him. He was not very happy about it. I probably should have taken the bell off the collar. That probably would have helped him adjust to it a little quicker. But then once he did adjust to it in a very lean way, I just did some electric tape. The board is in its anti-static bag, and I just taped it to his collar. And the bit where he looks up at the camera, which I think is about here, yeah, I kind of buzzed him with the coin motor. I also use the sample app. It's a bit hard to see. He's kind of walking around, and you can see all the little steps that he's taken. And so that's just a live stream of data from the collar to the phone. So I got a basic collar up and running, and the data was being transmitted. Now I need to actually get some toys going. So since I was already using the MetaWare for the collar, it made sense that I could use it for the toy too, since the toy kind of had to do a lot of the same things. I just had to figure out what I could put the board into to make it an actual toy, because you don't really want them playing with the board on its own. So you can get some 3D printed cases specifically designed for the MetaWare boards, but none of them were really suitable as a cat toy. And I thought about getting a 3D printer and designing my own, but it's not a very lean approach to toys. But these are. So I went onto Amazon and found some awesomely fun little refillable plastic eggs that look like chicks. And they just open and I can put the board inside. And then I also got some airflow balls, and with a utility knife, kind of cut them in half mostly, so that I could put the board in. And then this was, so the first time I put it in the ball, and he was pretty excited about it. Shortly after, it disappeared down the stairs, and I had no idea where he'd put it. But luckily, it has beacons, and I could slowly locate it. And then the first one in the egg. So the egg was really good at lighting up because it's totally surrounded. It was really good for testing in the evening, but I couldn't really move it much because the coin motor doesn't really drive it very far. But he was still kind of like, that's cool. It's hard to see because it is a dark video clip. So I had the collar tracking data, and the toys could perform a set of instructions, and the phone was collecting and understanding this data, but I was doing a lot of this manually. So the next thing I needed to work on was getting the brain to trigger things automatically. And there wasn't much to see here, because my cat has this weird sixth sense that if he's sleeping and I try to open the camera app on my phone, he wakes up. Like he knows. So I tried to capture it, but it didn't. Anytime I tried to like record him sleeping and turn the toy on, he would just wake up before I turned the toy on. So, but the first time he basically like fell off the sofa, which was quite funny. But it definitely worked to kind of waking him up. And then I mentioned this briefly before, that cat steps aren't the same as human steps. There is no magical filter that already exists for filtering accelerometer data and making it look like cat steps. So I had to write one. So I started out by looking at the raw data, the raw accelerometer data, and played with different filters to try to get the data first as clean as possible. And the raw data was really interesting, but it needed some more context because cats do more than just sleep. Not that, not that we see that, but so I started by making a list of all the things a cat does. So things like walking, running, playing, jumping, sleeping, grooming, that kind of stuff. And then I basically followed the cat around with the app, and as he did things, so I added some buttons to the iPhone app, and as he did them, I would just tap the button. And that just added another parameter to the accelerometer data, so that later I could then look at it and go, okay, this is when he was jumping, this is when he was walking. So here's a shot of when he's jumping. Some very huge spike in the data. So with all this data collected, I can then determine really what a cat step is, what constitutes a jump, and what sleeping looks like. Then I can update the app to tell me how many steps he took, how long he slept, how much he groomed himself, things like that. And then I also had a less than lean tangent where I thought, the Kinect can see like skeletons, right? I bet I could get that working with cats so that I could just leave the cat and you know, he can walk around and do whatever, and it will record stuff, and then it can tell me, and then I can compare the data, and yeah. I spent about 2 days just trying to get the Kinect to work with my Mac. I ended up having to use a Surface Pro. And then ultimately, yeah, it doesn't support cat skeletons out of the box. Surprise, surprise. And I thought maybe somebody had written one, but no. And then it was like, oh, I could write one. No, I really, that's a whole other like tangent to go down. So it was interesting, but sadly it didn't work. So I had this data, and I know roughly what cat steps and various other activities look like. So let's look at what user testing with cats looks like. And I'd done lots of user testing in the past with humans for apps. And I also really love to just watch people use phones. I find it really interesting. You know, it's so easy to find out from a human what they hate and what they like by like facial expressions and their body language. But user testing with cats, however, they're very complicated creatures. And you can't really just ask them a question, and you have to be incredibly patient. You have to wait for them to want to do the thing that you want them to do. And you have to derive a lot of the results of your testing purely from their body language. It's kind of hard to see. So like, his head is moving around, but the rest of him is just like, I could care less about this thing that you're flouting in front of me. And then there's also the problem of lack of interest. And he'll just do that all day. He'll just be like, oh yeah, that was a toy, whatever. And then there's, of course, the easily getting distracted, where it's just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go over there now. Bye. And these aren't things that you really have problems with humans, because you sit them down in a room and you ask them to do things and they do it. So it was definitely more time-consuming and challenging. So what does the future hold for this cat wearables project? Well, I'm almost at the point where I'm ready to start building real hardware. So prototyping with the airflow balls and the eggs have been a bit limiting. I want the cat to think that he's actually stalking prey, like that he's playing when he's playing with the toys, and I want the toys to react more to the cat's movement and how far away he is from the toy, and for the toy's behavior to change like a mouse's would or a bird's would, like as it was being stalked by a cat. Cat toys as a service. So the current problems that you have with cat toys, so you never really know if the cat is going to like it. So you might buy it at the store, and then who knows if he'll like it. They also get bored of them quite quickly. So to hopefully solve this, instead of the board being like actually a part of the toy, that the toys would be just kind of casings that you could swap the board out of, and that you could sign up for a cat toy subscription and get a new toy every month. Woo. And that maybe the brain could also analyze the effectiveness of the toy engaging with the cat, and if the cat is engaged, it can change the behavior until it finds something that the cat actually likes. And one of the things I realized is there's lots of different collars available for cats. Even the blue one that I got for my cat took me probably about 2 hours to pick out on Amazon, sadly, because there's just millions of collars, and some are elasticated, and some are safety ones, and some are this, and some are that, and it's kind of overwhelming. And lots of people customize them. They put tags and stuff on the collars. So I didn't really want to get into a situation where the whole collar needed to be the tracker, because if you'd have to take it off to recharge it, and then if the cat runs away, I don't know, I could probably get sued for that. So since the collar attachment has Bluetooth, we could also add beacons to things like the food dish and the water dish and the litter box. So this could give us a better understanding of the cat's overall health and behaviors. And then I also need to test with more cats. So I'm working on creating a few builds of the current prototype that I can actually send out to people to get more data and be able to kind of improve the algorithm a bit more. So I want this to go beyond just prototypes, and I want for it to exist as a product so that people can buy. So I'll actually be putting this on Kickstarter roughly in the end of November, hopefully. And I also know I need to hire some people. I've run a Kickstarter campaign before, and even though it was a fairly small project, it's still a lot of work. And it was something where it was quite overwhelming for me to make sure everything got done. So I know I need to get some more people for that, and then obviously people to write some more of the hardware side. And I need a cool name. I have no idea what to call this. I keep calling it Cat Wearables, which isn't really so fun. So if you have any ideas, let me know and I'll cut you in. So I've really loved working on this project, and I'm really looking forward to taking it to the next level. So I want to summarize by sharing some of the things that I've learned along the way. The first thing is approaching hardware doesn't have to feel like a monumental task. There are lots of existing solutions that you can use and customize. You don't need to start with a breadboard and a bunch of components. Make use of your existing skills. So like I picked the MetaWare board specifically because it has an iOS SDK. I like writing Objective-C. I also like writing Swift, but sadly they don't support that yet. But I didn't want to have to like also learn a new language and do all sorts of things. So definitely try to make use of whatever you already know. And then once you've verified your solution, then you can actually focus on creating more specialized hardware. And lean prototyping is super key for this. Generally, the first thing you think of as a lean prototype can be made leaner, and then probably leaner still. So get down to the bare bones of what it is that you're trying to verify, and try to make something for that. And we're still at a relatively early stage of wearables and the Internet of Things. I think at the moment there's quite a bit of the market that's overrun with like novelty items. But really try to go further than that, push the platform forward. As long as you're solving a real problem, don't worry if people think that what you're doing is silly. There's lots of people that still laugh at me when I say cat wearables, but it is actually solving a real problem. So what kind of problems do you want to solve? So thank you so much for listening. I'm most good on Twitter, and the cat also has a Twitter handle, which is UIKitten. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Any questions? Yeah?
You can speak to any vets or expert, please.
No, that is also actually next on the list of getting involved with some vets. I did see a platform recently, I think it's called iPet something or other, because you just stick an eye in front of anything. And but it was this thing where there were like toys in animal shelters, and you can go on and you get 2 minutes to control the toys and watch the cats play with them. Yeah, but none of the cats do anything because everybody just constantly bounces toys at them all day. But it's still quite interesting. So I think more vets are kind of getting on board with the idea of using technology. Yeah. Yes? Yes. Yeah, there's only a small, well, not a small percentage, but there's only some cats who actually respond to laser pointers. There is a Kickstarter at the moment for a toy that will just randomly start shooting lasers around. I had a dog before, though, that actually had a sensitivity to lasers and would have a seizure. So there is epilepsy that exists in dogs and cats, so not always a great thing to do. Any other questions? No? I'll be around, so if you do have any questions, just come and find me. Cool, thank you.